When we look at the climate, we look at climate change, the African continent has hardly contributed to greenhouse gas emission. We are less than 4% in terms of emission, and yet the impact has been huge. We have seen floods, we have seen droughts, we have seen, in my country, huge cyclones which have been hitting there. And one cyclone can take the country back 10 years or 15 years sometime in terms of development of our economy. And we have reached a point now when we're saying that just by looking at the international space, and I will take the words of Aliko Dangote when he said at Onga last year, no one will come to save us. So we're going to have to draw on our own resources. And if you look at the energy transition, we are looking more and more into availability of critical minerals. And who knows better than Africa holds the resources and all these really hugely demanded critical minerals. So how do we leverage this to drive the issue of renewable energy and of course clean energy? But having said this, I have a concern. Africa has not polluted. Africa is sitting on huge carbon resources, be it coal, be it fossil. If you look at the development of the Gulf of Guinea, if you look at Western Africa, if you look at a country like Angola, for example, sitting on huge resources in terms of fossil. Why can't Africa be given a carbon window to grow their economies based on available resources? And my concern is the day that trade will be linked to clean energy. For me, that's an issue, because how do we leapfrog into that level that all our production will be generated from clean energy? So that's why I make a point to say that instead of going by the consensus that we need to grow it today, we need to have a stand at the level of the African continent, that we need to grow our economies based precisely on this fossil, be given this carbon window that we so deserve. Science is there. I mean, we can't do away with science, without science. And science, as has rightly been said by Prime Minister Mayaki when we had this discussion 2 days ago, science is a mindset. And how do we leverage this to get the bright people to actually, with the talent, to be driving our agenda? And of course here, when we talk about science, we're talking, people don't connect. But science is food security. Science is food sovereignty. Science is energy. Science is water. So all these issues, we need to leverage in the science in there so as to be able to get the best result. Because at the end of the day, we are talking about the welfare and the benefits for our young people and of course for our populations. Well, I would say very bluntly here, we need to look at gender. We need to look at all this from the gender lens. And as I said to myself I said recently at the conference, is that it's not a slogan and it's not a political statement, it's a fact. Women feed Africa. How do we use the talent of women who do so much? How do we empower them? We're talking about the empowerment of empowerments. Empowerment her with the tools, empowerment them with the finances, empowerment that with the ability to transform what she's doing, because she feeds the continent. So we need to really look at agriculture through the gender lens, do away with the stereotype that, as I've said again recently, Africans agriculture with a woman with a baby in her back, in the sun, digging the soil, that's not agriculture as we know it. This is a sector, if we really leverage in the talent of youth, especially the women talent, it's a $1 trillion business. How do we leverage this so as to improve the food security and the food sovereignty of our countries? And here we're talking about smallholder farmers, because 80% of the food generated in the continent, they are generated by smallholder farmers, and the majority of them are women. So we can do so much more. And of course, not forgetting that we need to leverage a lot of the neglected and underutilized crops that can actually make a difference in the terms of hidden hunger. So this is what we have to do. Look at our law, look at our biodiversity, and we have a huge diversity, to see how we can bring in the food to the table. Of course, indigenous. And I understand when I was in my student days, when I was working precisely on project, when I was coming to ICRAF, that you have, for example, huge indigenous vegetables. People don't look at this as a potential to address food security and also hidden hunger. And it is cheaply available around Africa. So why do you always have to look at imported vegetable when you have so much here? So it's time to address the communication. It is time to look at how we can put this at the disposal of people, and of course at a much lower cost, because at the end of the day it impacts your purse, and yet it can bring in so many solutions to food security. As I said, I think the CGIAR strategy builds a lot on really leveraging science and innovation. But when we talk about innovative practices, we tend to think of high technology. It's not. I'll just give you a small innovation that has been able to address forest growing, for example. If you just throw the seeds out there, the chances of it being fed upon by birds is high. And yet one person, one farmer, had taken each seed and wrapped it around cow dung and spread it. The animals will touch it because the seed is protected. And at the first drop of rain, the cow dung releases the seeds and it provides a nutrient that this tree grows, and it has had tremendous success. So this is one way of, we also have to look at the traditional way by which we have been doing agriculture in Africa, because there's no one size fits all. And there have been, for example, in some Western African countries, they have been able to dig holes in the ground, put the seeds in there and wait for the rain to come. And has given more result because you don't have the investment for infrastructure for irrigation, for example. So there are many traditional ways that can help to address our agriculture. Of course, not forgetting that by doing this, we also prevent the desertification through the Green Wall, which spans from Senegal all the way up to Eritrea, for example.